Globalization and ethnic wars in Africa. Is there any relationship between globalization and the worsening local disruption and strife based on ethnic and other peculiaristic royalties in Africa? The worsening economic tension, ethnic rivalries, and ethnic wars in Africa since the emergence of globalization have necessitated this question. Most significantly, while the concept of globalization has generated intense debate among scholars, very little has been documented about globalization and ethnicity in Africa. This study, therefore, is a pioneering one that works to or seek to evaluate the impact of globalization and ethnic tensions in Africa. There is no agreement among scholars on the actual meaning of globalization. In fact, globalization may mean different things to different people. The confusion about the actual meaning of this case concept has raised some debate and doubt among experts in international relations about the utility of globalization as a theoretical framework. The elusiveness of the concept of globalization is seen as underlying the use of other similar concepts which are regarded as its precursors, such as interdependence, world society, world system, centralization, globalism, universalism, internationalism, and integration. In spite of the confusion and frustration scholars have faced in the attempt to unravel the meaning of globalization, the concept has continued to dominate the study of international relations in the 21st century. Globalization may be the concept of the 90s, a key idea which will understand the transition of human society into the third millennium. The concept is the most significant development and theme in contemporary life and social theory. In fact, it has also been claimed that in the face of the scholarly challenges presented by the end of the Cold War, globalization survived when many of our other ordering and explanatory concepts did not. Two main schools of thought have emerged to explain the meaning of globalization. The first is the liberal school, the second is the radical school. To the liberal scholars, globalization is one of the best things to have happened in the millennium. The schools has also used the concept of globalization to refer to processes, for instance, expansion and internalization of financial markets, interactive work, worldwide epistemic and interpretative communities, structures such as new emerging relationship deriving from changing of global investment pattern, and discourses, that is, new social construction of cognitive identity, meaning built upon postmodern global conditions. Essentially, liberal scholars see globalization as a process of freeing economy so that trade between countries can take place more easily. Freeing up in this context means providing more opportunities for business to make profits and reduce the state role as a producer of deliverer of our services. Globalization fosters economic efficiency and encourages international instructions and problem solving. The process should be welcomed for the effect that it has in promoting societal convergence built around the common recognition of the benefits of markets and liberal democracy. To some, globalization as a process is seen as a process of increasing interconnectedness between societies far away. According to them, a globalized world is one in which political, economic, cultural, and social events becomes more and more extensively and more deeply influenced by events of other societies. They further argue that the world seems to be shrinking and people are increasingly aware of this development, as can be seen in the existence of the use of the World Wide Web (WW), the electronic mail, the worldwide television communication, and global newspapers, among others. As opined by some other quarters, globalization can be seen as one ongoing gigantic movement initiated and pushed forward by the developed capitalist and industrial Western nations. This is with a view to removing or weakening territorial and jurisdictional boundaries and barriers of individual nations. The overall ambition is to establish a world free market economy, an open political system in which all nations will participate and operate along set of rules and conventions. They then listed the implication of globalization as follows: removing all barriers on investment and investment capital, competition of agricultural and industrial products in the free market, dismantling territorial barriers by the nation states, application of the vaccine of SARS to all nations in order to equip them for effective participation in the world economy. In summary, the supporters of globalization believe that the process is neutral and inevitable part of historical change, will increase wealth and prosperity for all countries and people, including workers. The World Bank report observes that the that increasing globalization helps to expand opportunities for nations and, on average, help workers to be rich in poor countries alike. The positive part for global economic the only positive part for the global world economy, the managing director of IMF, Michael Caduceus, observed that globalization is a continuation of the growing openness and integration among economies that have brought the world a half centuries on parallel prosperity. The radical scholars have collectively questioned the logic behind globalization and describe it as an old wine in a new wineskin. For instance, it has questioned the whole argument about the illusion of one world, myth of inevitability, and myth of identical effect. On the issue of one world, it is argued that while it is true that problems are becoming global, the world is still, as it is, full of regional variation. According to them, apart from Central Europe, all the world's displaced people are in the third world. On the myth of inevitability of globalization, it is observed that there is nothing inevitable or automatic about globalization. It is argued instead that it is a logical outcome of present capitalist globalization. Essentially, the radical scholars see nothing new in the globalization process. Consequently, they have defined globalization as a new form of imperialism. A recent undated booklet identified alternative views of globalization, described globalization as a new world war. According to the document, a new world war has begun, but now it is against humanity as a whole. In the name of globalization, this modern war assassinates and forgets, as in all world war. What is at stake is a new division of the world. The new division of the world consists of increasing power of the powerful and the misery of the miserable. It is observed that globalization is a comprehensive process which includes production, consumption, and the organization of materials and non-material life according to the ethos of capitalism in a univocal world. According to some, it embodies efficiency, supremacy of the market, and accompanying the emphasis on what? On welfare. Globalization is seen as a part of the overall hegemony facilitated by the end of the Cold War and emergent new world order of unipolar existence. According to some, after the Cold War, there is only one power bloc whose power or leaders act as though might is right. According to some, there is only one ideology, liberal ideology, one religion, market forces. In summary, the radical scholar believe that globalization is increasing world poverty and lowering living standard of workers and women, increasing the gap between the rich and poor countries, increasing the gap between the rich and what and poor within the countries. The central question is that it is at its critically addressed is that what is actually globalization and what are the impacts. Globalization is the last stage in development of capitalism. It is a process of restructuring or organizing and reordering the world economy to ensure the maximum development of the capitalist system that will generate prosperity and peace for the multinational corporations and advance the capitalist society. The main purpose of this new phase of capitalism is to maximize both production and marketing of goods and services worldwide with little or no hindrance. The true position is that globalization is simply capitalism at the stage of what? Of desperation, and therefore there is nothing new about it. This issue will become clearer if the history of the phenomenon is traced. Essentially, the history of globalization could be dated back to the rise and development of trade, with commercial empires seeking to extend their outlet. It is generally admitted that the production internalization and trade expansion phenomenon dated back to the development of capitalism. Thus, capital flight became a phenomenon in the second quarter of the 19th century. Between 1850 and 1870, England exported on average 610 million annually. that is 18% of its merchandise and 3% of its GNP. During the crisis between the two world wars, capital transnationalization increased once again, more especially to the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. Furthermore, the number of subsidiary countries companies of the 118 American transnational firms abroad increased from 180 in 1919 to 417 in 1929 and reached 715 in 1903. Production, globalization, and relocation of productive activities entered another period of growth in the 70s. During this period, capitalism reached a problematic state, that is, the stage of desperation. The capital economies had two main problems. First, the capitalists were overproducing large amounts of goods and services, but there were not enough consumers which could afford to buy them. Secondly, secondly, and perhaps the most importantly, most of the capitalists had accumulated large amounts of profit but had nowhere else to invest them. As a result of those twin problems of overproduction and overaccumulation of capital, the Western capitalists started looking for ways to solve these two problems. Essentially, the problems were addressed from two angles. First, those who decided to continue to produce goods and services are forced to look for new markets and new ways of producing these goods at lower cost. This led to the extension of some aspect of trade and production in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. For instance, investment in African mining increased from $418 million in 1996 to $662 million in 1997. Today, there are about 200 international mining companies operating in Africa. The other group of capitalists who felt the market was saturated turned their attention and investment to money lending and speculation to seek rapid profit. Most of this lending in 1970s and 80s went to developing countries who were caught up in debt net of what of the West. This explanation this explained the emergence of new lending group in Europe such as London Club, Paris Club, and others. It is within this context of overproduction and underconsumption that efforts were made to break barriers in trade through globalization. Thus, the basic aim of economic globalization includes dismantling of tariffs barrier by nation states, removing all barriers on investment and investment capital, and the completion of agricultural and industrial production in the free market. However, what is quite new in this era of globalization is that effort and prospect to transcend the nation state as a regulator and manager of political and economic order following production internalization. This project is supported by a number of transnational firms, businesses, and lobbies. From this standpoint, globalization is used ideologically to impose greater liberalization on nation states and to limit rules and restrictive standards against the actions of big firms. It should be noted that innovation and discovery in the area of science and technology have greatly enhanced the success of globalization. The discovery of computers and internet made globalization a reality. The internet came into widespread use in the early 90s. By using internet within minutes, an individual sitting at a computer can gain access to information that will fulfill many libraries. Unfortunately, African countries seem to be unprepared for this last stage of capitalism. As observed, the problems revolve around the fact that Nigeria's place in all the grand international program of globalization is like a poor man in the club of rich men. Accordingly, Nigeria is not yet technologically, economically, and culturally equipped or ready for participation in globalization, since the country has little or no ability to compete. In fact, the country is technologically backward, financially poor, and industrially dead. It is within this context that we shall critically examine the issue of globalization and ethnicity in Africa. My name again is David Oni, and my channel is there for you to subscribe and follow this channel. Just subscribe and follow this channel. Follow us and also click on the notification button so that when we come up on a new topic every time, you'll be one of the